Good evening. I'm Ewelina Dobrzalecki of the Hybrid Platform, and I would welcome you all to today's hybrid performance. For those unfamiliar with the Hybrid Platform, we are a joint project of the University of the Arts in Berlin and the Technical University in Berlin. And we're a project to support, foster, and enable exchange and collaborations between those two universities in the arts, science, and technology. Tonight, we would like to present to you the performance collective Replika and the research project Dancing at the Edge of the World. The co-founder and also artistic director of the project is Diana Șerbanescu. She has a double background in computer sciencing and performing arts. Diana is also a researcher of the Weizenbaum Institute for the Networked Society, where both universities are part of the consortium. She is there also a team lead of the research project Criticality of AI-based Systems. Diana works with a practice-led approach to research on the bias in machine learning algorithms. She shows, for example, inherent power structures in current technological systems. With Replika, she explores the potential of sentimental machines, like the measurability of emotion. She also reflects on the validity of traditions in a world where technologies enter the collective unconscious and generate new forms, new aesthetics, a very warm welcome to you, Diana, and also to the whole team of the project. And before I give you the Zoom power, I would just like to say that this whole evening will be divided into two parts. First, Diana will introduce shortly the project. Then there will be a streaming, and at the very end, we will have a period of discussion where everybody can also give questions, pose questions on the YouTube stream or YouTube live chat. But first of all, Diana, welcome, and please tell us a little bit more about the project and some more information so the spectators can see more about.
Thank you so much, Ewelina, for this wonderful introduction. And thank you so much to the Hybrid Platform, to Nina Horstman, to you for offering us this digital stage to showcase our work. I'm very excited to welcome you to this evening. I'm very excited about this project. It's a work of passion. And I'm going to introduce my motivation and myself and the project a little bit more. I'm originally from Romania. As Ewelina said, I have a double background in performing arts and computer science. I was educated in Romania, Germany, and Scotland. I haven't managed to improve my accent very much. I'm still having my Romanian accent. And I'm very much interested in the ethics and politics of artificial intelligence. I'm interested in feminist politics, and I'm interested in experimental theater. 2 years ago, I had the privilege and the luck to receive this funding from Volkswagen Stiftung on the track AI and Society of the Future for a project entitled The Shape of Things to Come, rehearsing future societies with artificial intelligence and performing arts. And the performance that you are going to watch tonight is an artistic outcome. It's of an artistic research we conducted in the second phase of this project throughout the whole span of last year, 2020. And it's an extremely privileged position that I was in to have this opportunity, to have this funding, and also to have the support of the Weizenbaum Institute, of the Berlin Open Lab, who supported us with offering us a space to work and to rehearse with Technical University and the University of the Arts, and of course, Hybrid Platform for opening our work. I'm extremely thankful because I was very privileged to work with amazing artists. So I would like to extend a big thank you to all the team, extremely talented people who contributed with their skills to the making of this project. And I would like to unpack a bit more why artificial intelligence and performing arts, or why artificial intelligence in theater and dance, and why is that important? And I think it all starts for me with a political mission. I believe that if we are to democratize technologies, such as AI, we have to open new ways for the creation of those technologies, for making those technologies more experiential in a way that is not appealing only to a limited number of very skilled specialists in very specific domains, but in a way that is appealing to the embodied intelligence of everyone, in a way that is more appealing to our senses, to our embodied cognition, with our perceptive abilities that are honed and trained through the experience of our lifetime, through interaction with each other and with the world. So I believe there is a radical potential, like in opening new ways for designing those interfaces and those technologies. I do believe that at the moment, these technologies are not performative enough. And I don't mean performative in a sense of performance or efficiency, but I mean performative in the way they manifest themselves. Most of those algorithms are functioning behind screens, like in ways that are opaque, and they are not disclosing their modus operandi. Even the more performative ones, for example, intelligent systems such Alexa, are not performative enough. I do believe that systems like Alexa, for example, could benefit greatly for something like a voice coach to make it more inclusive in the way understands and expresses different accents and cultural ways of manifesting itself through the voice, or like in the way it uses this kind of vocal apparatus, this voice, to express more emotion and to engage the user, like, or the person that interacts with more. What if Alexa would have a body? How would this body look like? What would be the politics of this body, like the performative of this body? How would this body move? What if Alexa had a personality or has already a personality? Actually, the question is, like, who are we talking with when we are talking with a system like Alexa? How is this system constructed behind the scenes? And I think those questions, I think performing arts and dance and theater are particularly, it's a field of knowledge that is particularly well equipped to bring a lot of methodologies to dealing with those questions. And I think it's very exciting because it's a lot about the politics of proximity, the politics of attention, the politics of representation, the politics of space. I think it's an incredibly large field of experimentation and playfulness exploration. And last but not least, I would like to emphasize this playfulness and actually the radical power of poetry. Like most of those systems are operating through categorizing the world into certain, like packing the world in certain categories. And I think the power of poetry is actually like to take old systems through which power is manifested and to refactor them like in new ones, to create new meanings and new possibilities out of the old. And actually, this is what we try, in a nutshell, to do with this project, with Dancing at the Edge of the World. It's a very playful exploration. It's a very poetic exploration. I would like you to regard it as such and to try to enjoy it with an open mind. I would encourage you to let your associative mind wander and your lyricism come true. It's an experience that was originally designed to be experienced in person, like full environment, in an immersive environment with the performers around the audience and within a space of proximity. Unfortunately, like we have, due to the situation, to manifest, to present it behind screens. But I would suggest for a more immersive experience, I would warmly recommend you use a pair of headphones. The sound design for the performance is amazing. And I'm very, very thankful to the amazing team of artists who work on it. So I would say this is a cyber poetry in motion, and I would encourage you to enjoy it. Thank you very much for joining us.
So I guess
So what does this do? What does it do with these bits of the... Are these the sensors?
Yeah, these are the sensors. I mean, this thing that I put in the beginning is the sensor.
The machine uses only two sounds produced electrically. One of these represents the breath. The other, the vibration of the vocal cords. There are no phonograph records or anything of that sort.
I am beautiful Betty, the standard female
I am
voice.
Huge Fairy, a very large
My
person
name is
with a
Kit
deep
the
voice.
Kid, and I am about 10
I am
years
the
old.
standard male voice, Perfect Paul.
Okay, so I'm going to start the calibration. Arms. All the way up. Move a little bit. Good. And back. Okay, now knee all the way down. Now lean forward and back. Stand still. This is your base. Now move around. Listen to the sound. Okay, now we start the training. We start with Buddha. Second. Third. And the fourth. Okay, try now. Very good. Let's move to the next. Please go to the first pose. Okay. Second. Now the third. Okay, and neutral. And training now.
So what does this do? So what does this do? What does it do to these bits of the are these the sensors? Are these the sensors?
Yeah, these are the things. I mean, this thing that I put in the beginning is the sensor.
The machine uses only two sounds electrically. One of these represents the breath. The other, the vibration of the vocal cord. There are no phonograph records, or anything of that sort.
I am beautiful Betty. I am the standard Betty.
I am
The
huge
standard
Betty. I am a very large,
My
a
name
very
is
large.
My name is and I am about and
I am the standard male voice, standard male voice, perfect Paul.
Please go to the first pose. Okay. Second. Now the third. Okay, and neutral. And training now. Okay, let's try. Okay, so this is the first pose, first sound, first pose. Okay, second. Third. And then the fourth. Okay, you can come back. Turn me now. Okay, let's try.
Is your skin? How thin? You can see the veins through my skin. See them like blue threads flickering in my wrist. And my eyelids are blotched with purple. Is your skin? Can you feel the pulse? Sometimes my skin feels so thin, I worry that it's going to break. Something's going to burst forth liquid. de la madre. El chico se haga grande.
Rebalancing emotion and reason. Neither ethics nor emotions are coordinated to reason. Visual versus symbolic, making unsettled.
Rebalancing emotions and reason. Neither ethics nor emotions are subordinated to reason. Small children with their hands get from special emotions. They say, "This is my life. This is my life."
A society predominantly concerned with preserving its existence. A society with a modest standard of living. Conservative of natural
A society that has made a successful adaptation to its environment and has learned without destroying itself. This is when they fall in love. This is the time of experience.
Small children wear the clan skirts of special stations. They seek and they point out fits and drops.
They sit and they point out floats and drops in the pattern. We're friends. This is my brother. This is my brother. My brother. Society with a modest landscape and satisfying
Society that has made successful adaptation to its environment has learned without destroying itself.
This is the evolution of great sickness. This is their old age. Small children with the landscape and special
Society with a modest living, conservative of natural resources, low cost of strategic rate, and political alliances.
The low constant fertility rate and a political life based on consent.
Society predominantly concerned with preserving its existence, and society with modern standards of living concerned with natural resources.
Has made a successful adaptation to its environment and drops.
Small children were the transcripts and special occasions they see
with a low constant fertility rate and a political life based on consent. How that helps with
what I needed to do somehow was to remember how to say something buried deep inside me. I don't mean just psychologically, but almost encoded in me. The experience is a rediscovery of that which is encoded in the totality of a human being. It is a rediscovery grounded in the here and now, but simultaneously deeply connected to that which came before. That which came before is encoded in the body of the doer, as if the body were a living artifact. Containing the imprint of all that came before being in the here and now. However, this coding is not limited to the cultural conditioning of one lifetime, but extends back through one's imagined ancestral life, all the way to the origin, the beginning. This is experience as a deep connection that finds its expression in extremely precise, informative actions. Experience as a movement back in time, a reconnection
one's roots.
Ora faço isso, não lhe nada. se causta cordiva. Avapimu fideli protini, avapimu fideli protini, urutinista naueli uela, avapimu fidela protini, urutinista naueli uela, urutinista isnu toro.
Hi, everyone. Hello again. Thank you so much for sticking with us through the glitchy moments of the beginning. We are a bit technologically challenged, and I apologize for that. It's the hazards of working with Zoom. And yeah, so finally we managed to solve the problems. And now I have the pleasure to invite you to a round of discussion to unpack a bit the ideas that went behind this project. Many of you might wonder at the moment what they have just seen. I hope it was nevertheless an enjoyable experience that appealed to your affect and to your imaginative mind. I would like to first welcome my dear friend and collaborator and former colleague from Scotland, Kirsty May Hamilton, who collaborated with me on the dramaturgy of the piece, and with whom we've discussed some of the original ideas from which we started this artistic research. So welcome, Kirsty. If you'd like to introduce yourself in a couple of sentences.
Hi, Diana. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of the panel this evening. My name's Kirsty May Hamilton. I'm from the Scottish Highlands, and I'm now based in Glasgow, and I'm a feminist theatre maker. And Diana invited me to be a part of this project because of my interest in staging speculative fiction, in particular, my preoccupation with the political potential of staging feminist speculative fiction. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us, Kirsty. So I was thinking maybe we can start by describing a bit the process, like how everything started and how the original ideas came together. As I mentioned in my short introduction in the beginning, we were interested in creating an experiential way, an experiential technology that could be used and built around the body. We had in mind this idea of a soft and poetic machine that kind of challenges a bit presents itself as an alternative to the mainstream ways of constructing technologies and to the mainstream politics embedded in those machines, and also to the main narratives. So yeah, I think it was, for me, was central, this idea of embodied knowledge, which originated also very much from Donna Haraway, the idea that this kind of resistance to the separation of body and mind, and the fact that the theory is embodied, and there are embodied ways of knowing. I was very interested in exploring this further.
Yeah, I think that resonates with my own practice. I think Donna Haraway draws attention to the way a subject is formed by the culture around it. Mm-hmm. And in my practice in particular, I'm interested in realist theatre's use of representational apparatus, and the fact that that is influenced by ideology, but actually is treated as though that ideology is natural. So realist theatre and dramatic theatre denaturalizes that ideology. But I think within our exploration, we wanted to highlight and unmask those influences and show that nothing exists in a vacuum. Nothing comes back, take it back to this natural state. And actually we had to peel back these layers of ideology to get to the crux of it, which really worked alongside our post-dramatic approach, I think. So we wanted to strip back narrative and text and character and show that these are representational apparatus used by dominant hegemony to oppress marginalized groups. I think Haraway.
I don't want to interrupt. You're saying very beautiful and interesting things, So
I just think Haraway tied in very nicely with sort of the actual practicalities of staging feminist speculative fiction. But then also, I think for you, you took some of those beliefs or positions and applied it to AI.
Exactly, because we talked a lot about this kind of question, politics of representations, and the parallels between theater and, for example, technological design. And for me, like, the question came round on and on about this kind of notion of the body and the representation of the body, but also like this embodied knowledge. I wanted to understand what do we mean by embodied knowledge? What does it represent? And then we explore this idea a bit further. I have to say that from a theater perspective, there are different layers that I see as relevant and important. So I think there is one layer of the training, the way the body is shaped and conditioned through certain methods and methodologies. And then it's the problem of dramaturgy that you are emphasizing how a narrative is constructed. And some of the tools that I was interested in originally, I was interested in the Polish theater of Grotowski, because I think he intersects like his ideology is also like interested in exploring this knowledge of the body. He says that knowledge is a matter of doing. So I wanted to take this idea of like a bit further and to kind of try to emphasize the knowledge of the body in this way. And in this performance, we created an AI that sonified the body, literally gave a voice to the body in a way that it's not random, but also like connected to some semantic rules. Very rudimentary, very basic for the beginning, but there is a logic behind. It's kind of a very rudimentary language of movement.
Yeah, which again I think tied in well to the feminist theories that we were utilizing, because I think we approached this from a belief that logocentrism is phallocentric, that man-made language reinforces patriarchy. And so how do you get sort of underneath that? And that was identifying the body as a different form of language, maybe even tied to a visual language, which again worked hand in hand with the post-dramatic approach. So I think that set up our exploration of the body in unison with technology to see if that could give us some sort of feminist artistic language.
For me, what's also interesting in exploring this combination between the embodied voice and the artificial voice, this dialogue that was created through this performative artifact, through this partner, that it was almost like a co-creative partner. The AI was actually like improvising live and feeding into the performance.
I think it definitely raised questions of agency and philosophical questions spinning off from it, like consciousness. So I felt like it was a living, breathing partner sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It was, but I think that also very beautifully tied in with your interest in lyricism and the poetic, because at times there were those sort of mystical moments within it as well.
But it also, like, I feel it breaks a bit this narrative of the body-mind split and this embodied way, like, of thinking, this escapism that kind of mainstream technologies are kind of promoting, this kind of escapism from the body. Like behind the screens, we are kind of uploading ourselves in this virtual space. And I feel there could be alternatives to this way of thinking. And the alternative would be to develop systems that could help us bring us back more to the perception of our own bodies and bring us back more to the situated environments in which we are and emphasize the connection that we have with each other, those politics of space and proximity.
Yeah, I think it actually ties in so nicely with a post-dramatic feminine approach. We used Cara Berger in some of her research and our creation, and privileging the sensory. I think that this could be a really useful tool in staging feminist speculative fiction in future.
Thank you so much, Kirsty. I think we should actually move to the next group of people. Thank you so much. We are gonna join. You are gonna join with us, like in the other round of discussions. I would like to invite now Mika, Johannes, Lou, and Meredith. Hello and welcome to our creative team, technical team. Mika, who implemented this wonderful wearable collar. Johannes and Lou, who worked on sonifying the movements of the dancers, and Meredith, who worked on data visualization and processing. And actually, like we are looking for methods and ways to make sense of this data of the collective body and find synchronicities and patterns of movement. So maybe you can, I would invite you to shortly introduce yourselves. Maybe Mika, you could start with introducing yourself, and then Johannes and Lou, and then Meredith.
Okay, so hi, my name is Mika Satomi. I work with electronics, textiles, and then for this project, I created this sensor costume or sensor system, and then also the system to capture actual data and then run machine learning with it and then distributing the data. So that's my background.
Thank you, Mika.
Hi, I'm Johannes Hellberger from the creative studio Kling Klang Klong. In my personal background, I'm a sound artist part-time, so I worked a lot with dance and installation art also, but with Kling Klang Klong, I'm also with my colleagues kind of founder and directing this company towards the future. And as Kling Klang Klong, we create sonic experiences basically and acoustic narratives for all kinds of projects and mediums, and always try to find, by entangling code and technology and music and sound, try to find new ways of expression and do things we have never done before. So this was a perfect invitation to Diana. So thank you for bringing us into this project.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Lou.
Hi, I'm Lou O'Neill. My personal background is composition and sonic arts. I do a lot of composition work using computational systems and kind of generative live interactive systems. So in a way, this was a perfect project for me to get into. So I was really happy first for Johannes to invite me into this project and then to meet the rest of the team. It's been really cool.
Thank you so much, Lou. Meredith?
Hi, I am Meredith. I'm a creative technologist. My background is in biomedical engineering, and now I work mainly in kind of theatre and performance, but also in other creative areas to kind of think about ways to use machine learning, integrate machine learning into kind of artistic and performative practice.
Thank you, Meredith. So I actually have to confess that I've been a big fan and admirer of your work, all of your work, like since a long time. And I think, as I said, like I feel very lucky and privileged to have had this opportunity to invite you on this project to collaborate. I would be very interested now, like in discussing more about the ideas and like more details about the technology, like how everything came together. And also because you have very different approaches also to artificial intelligence, and you've used machine learning like in different ways. I think it's also like interesting to explore like your experience and your interest in working with AI, and how you felt like it came together in this project. Mika, I would be interested, like first starting with the color. I know this is like a continuation of your body of work. Like you've been developing this type of technology that also like is very performative, and this is something I really like about your work. That you are developing these beautiful soft machines that are basically like, yeah, you can wear them on your body like they're clothing, but they have this kind of magical element to them. Can you tell us more about the sensors and about how you developed like all the pieces together?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so maybe some people are wondering what I was doing in the beginning of the video and then also this training. So for this project, what was interesting was that we used this Bella board, which is a small computer system that is for running real time with low latency. So that means basically you can read all the sensor data in real time and then synthesize on body with the small speakers. So each of those sound we were hearing was coming, I mean, partly, of course, coming from performer when they're singing, but also it was coming from performer's body, I mean, on-body computer and then the speaker. So what I was doing in the beginning with this training was training these small computers that they are wearing about their position or like sensor data that creates in a certain positions. And therefore, later on, this computer would calculate always which position they are in, and then the corresponding result for a synthesis. And in terms of sensor technique that I used for this particular project, because we were doing more like a rehearsal, and then I didn't know quite in the beginning what Diana wants to do, what kind of movement, and also we were quite many in terms of performers. So instead of creating a fixed set of costume with the sensors, I made these small sensor tapes that we could place in anywhere on the body, and we were playing quite a lot of which part of the body would make sense, and then create these postures that they were creating, and also what kind of sound it comes when you do a certain pose. So this was quite different process than doing costume work that I usually do.
I thought that was very interesting, actually, this process of exploring like points on the body where you can harvest data, like how to capture this kind of, how to capture movement, how to represent movement, like in this very simplistic way, like in a way, because like it's almost like a metaphor, like you are just probing certain points on the body through those sensors, which are stretching and are not even very precise. This is something I really like also, like about this idea of the sensors, because like with the wear and tear, like even throughout the span of a day, they have different readings of the data.
Yeah, if you look at the raw data that comes from the sensor, it moves a lot. It's not so precise or so, how to say, like you cannot repeat it over the day or over the time. But what is interesting is then you use the machine learning, which is a kind of acts like a filter to interpret these data, and then it is much more organic in that sense. So imagine like it's a moving data, but if you look at overall the picture of the data, it's always, you can see as a human tendency of, is it the posture A or posture B? And machine learning does a similar ways of understanding these data, sensor data. So yeah, that was what was interesting in this experiment.
I thought what was also interesting was to use the same technology on different bodies, and then to have this same kind of cycle of movements, or like this kind of repetition of movement, but with the different feature of each person, like with the differences that each person brought like into these readings.
I think it was almost a torturous for sometimes for the performers, because they have to do the same movement again and again. And even if you do exactly the same posture training, each person had different result. So this was, yeah, it was very interesting and probably very challenging for performer.
I was mentioning for a brief moment at the beginning that some of the theater techniques and methodology that inspired me, like what I used in this performance, was taken from Grotowski and from his laboratory. And he's working a lot with the voice, the embodied voice, and also like with the polyphonic singing. And what I felt also through this repetition, like on different bodies, like with this artificial voice, creating voice through movement, but kind of respecting certain symmetries. I felt like also like a recreation in technological form of this idea of polyphony, or like in my understanding, like almost making a choir, but instead of using the real voice, like the artificial voice was producing this choir. I would like to now, like we are a bit pressed with the time, so I would like to invite Johannes and Lou to discuss a bit about their process. And it is a very interesting actually concept and process, and I would invite you to discuss more about the voder and about the artificial voice that you've created.
Yeah, just to maybe give also the audience a little overview of our part. So we basically went into conception, what kind of sounds could we give to these bodies and to this beautiful tool from Mika. And what was very different to working on other projects I did before was basically creating the tools and the toys with which the dancers themselves make the soundtrack. So Lou and I, we went into looking deeper in what kind of synthetic voice generation there is, also historically, and we found this voder, which you also see in the video, where you see like the secretary woman playing the synthetic voice and this guy on stage. So this was like the first synthetic voice generation in 1939. And this was super inspiring to take this into this realm of AI now and try to give, as you said, like the voices a body, like this body a voice. Just want to mention that it was really inspiring to work with Mika's tools here. Also this, the possibility with this AI learning algorithm to actually adapt this movement to sound thing to the movement material of the dancer, and not the other way around, which before with movement sensors was always like this thing, you create a certain instrument with it, and then the dancer has to find ways to make it look good and sound good in the same time. And now the AI would adapt actually to the movement material and allow the dancer to more freely express, even though there's a lot of technical issues in the process. But I'll stop now here and give Lou the word to actually add something from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, maybe what I would add to that is relating to the process of, so once we sort of had the concepts, the ideas of how we would like to approach this project and started developing it, and there was this ensuing process, which was this constant feedback loop with especially with Mika and with the performers, where we would just have this constant trial and error process. And I think it's interesting also with regards to the conversation that you, Diana, and Kirsty just had right before about basically trying to give a sort of a platform for embodied knowledge and like, let's say, so as to present embodied knowledge. And I think this is something, I mean, we bring so much technology into a process, and unfortunately that's kind of the stage we're at. We have to bring so much technology, and then we end up trying to overcome the technology so that we can kind of have this direct interaction between a sort of a composition moment and the movements of the performer. So basically, that's something which I found quite interesting with regards to the conversation you had just before. So, I mean, realistically, we're still at a stage where there's so much technology involved, and it's sort of can be a complicated process. but I think it's kind of interesting that we're at this stage, but this sort of ultimate aim of this is to kind of overcome that technology. And I suppose then we just between the musical moment and the movement moment. What do you think about that, Johannes?
Well, I think it's funny, I'm just thinking somehow we end up always bringing in new technologies. You know, the Voda, if you look at 1939, it's like a church organ. And now we put it like on this little microprocessor on Mika's suit. And now the big hurdle is this AI thing, which always did something, but never what we expected, or more or less like this. So I don't know if people, let's say people like us who always try to bring this whole technology and art thing further, will always maybe bring in new technology. And let's say what we have overcome is then small. You know, it was nothing new for us to make a sound patch, which is interactive, the movement, blah, blah, blah. Done that, bring in the new stuff, bring in the AI. And that was the research. And it was so interesting about it because we always try to find better ways in a way. It's kind of what drives us and what interest. I don't know. It's very, maybe we don't overcome technology, even though I did a lot of dance pieces where we didn't need any technology, which dance doesn't need technology. That's another truth in that, but it's really,
Can I jump in? Also,
please.
Because AI is such a hyped word, and then, I mean, we also use the word of AI here too, but actually what we did in terms of AI is much more like a filter. And I felt like when we were rehearsing, most powerful thing was actually how performers can cope with these technologies we are bringing, and then kind of create this new aesthetic experience with their own voice and singing. So we shouldn't focus too much on technology, maybe. I mean, as Johannes said, we don't need technology to dance.
But I think we need dance and theater to teach technology what it means to be human, like in a way. And to be honest, I also think like this is a work in progress, and I have to repeat that this is an experiment, like on this so many different levels. So like the performance was fragmented. It presents like different episodes, like taking different ideas, but also like our process like was. Not always smooth. Like it was it's very difficult to work sometimes with technology in the same space because the technology development has a different time than the performative time, or the dancing body has a different timing than the debugging and then the installing of the sensors, or like the programming of the software. So I felt there was a bit of friction, like between those kind of different times and ways of operating somehow. But I also felt that from time to time there were moments of pure magic, So watching from outside, there were moments when we made discoveries, like exactly like Mika said. When I discovered how the synthetic voice was supporting the human voice at one point, and it was kind of this improvisational loop where the bodies were almost like making jazz music, or like supporting the voice like in this kind of very new and original ways. Like it was beautiful to watch. And talking about synchronicities and also like moments of magic, I would like now to introduce Meredith and to pose the question, like, can you capture magic with this artificial eye? And what is your approach to pattern capturing patterns?
Can you capture magic? I hope so, but I don't know, I think is the answer. So just again, to give an overview of my part of the project, I think it was possibly the most speculative. because we kind of tried to take some of the machine learning off the bodies of the performers individually, where we were trying to detect kind of what the performer's pose was in a moment of time, like how their body is positioned in space at a moment in time. And we were trying to kind of take that a level out and look at all of those bodies moving together through time in the space. And also, instead of kind of imposing a representation onto what we were asking the machine to learn, i.e. like setting these points or these positions which the performers were navigating between to drive the sound, we did a different kind of machine learning, which is unsupervised, where we just asked the machine to try and model all this data it's receiving, all of this data from the 8 channels on the suits across this period of time, and try to learn and extract its own patterns. What those patterns are, we often find very difficult to interpret as humans, because they're statistical patterns primarily. But the success of a lot of modern machine learning AI is that we've managed to kind of nudge neural networks into learning patterns which we understand ourselves. As like an artist and technologist, what I'm most interested in, I think, is these kind of liminal modes of representation, or like these liminal, like that there are spaces where it's very clear that our machine has identified a cat as a cat in the photographs. This is a cat. This is a dog. But there's a moment of representation or learning, possibly, that we can't necessarily understand and wouldn't be presentable in a scientific or research context, but it's still interesting. So to give you an example, what are the qualities of a body moving through space? Some of those I could name, tempo, but how could I possibly quantify or describe the kind of the passion or the emotional intensity of it through language? No. And because I couldn't, we could never create a labeled data set, and we could never train a supervised machine anyway. So what I was trying to hone in on, I think, although we were extremely rushed for time, and I wouldn't say we've cracked it yet, but what I was trying to hone in on was whether we can nudge neural networks to represent these bodies moving through space in a way that through sonification or through interaction with the performers, which are both methodologies which are more accepting of ambiguity, we could bring those representations to the fore and make them something aesthetic and understandable to an audience.
How much data do you think you would require for capturing something that?
It's very difficult. I mean, it's unknown in this case, right? It's because it's a research question and it's open. As a rule of thumb, more is always better.
Some of your graphics were used like in the visual, like as overlays on some of the performative moments. Can you just unpack very shortly what those visuals represented?
I think first we just saw the raw signals coming off the suits, which were from these 8 sensors positioned on the bodies. So that's very simple. When the joints are curved or when there's pressure on the sensor, then you'll see a jump in that signal. And then we hope that somewhere encoded in that is more information about how the body is moving, because these things have to be related. The left arm is related to the right, and the left foot is related to the knee. And then the second was the machine actually training. So that top plot was its loss, and what it was trying to do at every step of its training process was to reconstruct segments of inputted data, little moments of recording. Like we're investigating this kind of gestural time span it's less than a full body motion. It's kind of half a second to a second or something. So the bottom was the kind of the machine attempting to reconstruct those signals, and so that gives you some visual feedback on how well it's doing. Not very well in that graphic. And what I wish we'd been able to show finally was this kind of this actually more visually attractive and but encoding. So what is a visualization of how the neural network has encoded a moment in the time, or moments in time rather, but that didn't quite make it into the cut, I felt.
Okay, thank you so much, Meredith. If you have any of you have anything to add to this round?
Well, I was really impressed by your goal, let's say, Meredith, and I hope we can still pursue there, because I grew up a bit in the stratosphere of William Forsythe in Frankfurt, and through that learned how complex modern dance and performative art is, also through this whole aspect of improvisations, and then you have many people, and then and William Forsythe actually tried at one point to teach this, so he has several videos to show these complexities behind his choreography. And you said once this thing that hopefully the computer will kind of grasp these other qualities, which are for us as viewers super hard to grasp, and even harder for us as sound designers to make, like a censored sound of it. And the idea was actually to give your AI a voice, a sound, which I hope we will do. So basically the idea to what can the computer, the AI, grasp from this super complex art form? This is a very, very interesting question, which I hope we can pursue in the future.
I think that's very interesting too, and I really hope as well that this project is gonna continue, because it's basically the question about how is meaning created, and how the meaning is created in the machine, and how is the meaning that we perceive as meaning being created somehow through different layering of performative material, or like layering of concepts put together, like in this case, like in the same space, like performative bodies performing according to certain rules, but also like influencing each other in subtle ways, because they share the space, because they share the proximity with each other, because they share certain training elements and awareness of each other.
I wonder, I thought maybe we go to the next chapter, or
let's go to the next chapter, because we are going to come together again, like in the final round, when we are going to invite the audience to ask us questions and to answer the questions. But for now, I would like to welcome Kirsty back, and to invite one of the performers, one other performer, because Kirsty was also like performing in the piece. So welcome back, Kirsty, and I would like to also introduce Kate Ryan, my friend and collaborator, Kate. Kate, if you could also like present yourself in a couple of short sentences.
So hi, my name is Kate Ryan, as Diana just said. I'm an actor, primarily doing theatre. I met Diana in Poland in 2016 in a place called the Grotowski Institute. And it was a very fortunate meeting for me in many, many ways, because I'm very lucky now that Diana invited me onto this project. And I ended up working in the Grotowski Institute for a couple of years, and brought that experience with me to the research process you saw now.
Thank you so much, Kate, for joining me, and thank you so much for actually like collaborating with us like for such like a long time, because we've collaborated several times like throughout the years. I would like to actually like discuss from your own perspective also, like how was for both of you improvising with this technology, or how did it feel for you to have this creative partner directly placed on your body?
I mean, for me, it was
amazing. I'm feeling very nostalgic now, having just watched this video, and I'm feeling kind of a physical nostalgia. But yes, I used to have this sensor here, and when I moved, it would do this. I found the whole process incredibly interesting, and I think it at moments, these kind of magic moments that you say that we found throughout the process, there were moments that really changed my understanding of what the structure of a performative experience, what the structure of a reality can be. I think at the beginning it felt a little bit difficult. I think I certainly am very scared of interacting with any kind of technology. So I think there was a lot of fear at the beginning, and also this thing of, I'm a quiet person. I don't like to make a noise when I don't intend to, which isn't really optional with this thing. And then at some point something clicked, and I think the process became primarily about listening to this creature that you have attached to your chest. And it's very intimate because it's a very proximate sound. It's very close. And yeah, I mean, it can make a huge difference what is the kind of the content of that sound. If they change, for example, at one point in the video you saw there's a sound of water. And this for me was a very strong experience of, okay, I have water in my chest. What do I do with this? But also there were a couple of ways of, as I understand it, that the sound was produced. So you have this kind of voder mode, which we've talked a little about, and you have also a mode called granular, which I remember they switched the modes on me when we were kind of mid-improvisation, and it was really like, okay, what is going on? Because it was this incredibly sensitive experience. It would flip very quickly and quite brutally between very different sounds, and it became this process of trying to find out where is the edge of this sound, and feeling really for the boundary between what point does this change, and staying in that kind of improvisational process for that amount of time, it's very interesting, and it really changes something in terms of how you understand what you're doing.
Thank you so much. Kirsty, maybe you can have also some things to add.
Yeah, of course. I think Kate worked very intimately with the machine because she did some training with it, like a full day of training with it. And I think she has some insights into it that would be very interesting to explore with a larger group of people. For me, I feel like there are two kind of immediate responses. One, a sort of maybe a bit flippant response, which is that it was interesting to hear my own voice on other people, which I think really highlighted our own personal connection to our voice, and again brings it back to this kind of embodied experience. And for example, I noticed when other people had my own voice and they were just moving around, so it was going off, they weren't necessarily performing, they were just walking around space or doing something in the rehearsal room. I found it very irritating when it was my voice, because I felt like there was this definite connection to myself, and I didn't want to be responsible for an annoying sound when I wasn't instigating it. So I think that there's some very interesting ways to use the machine in terms of that. Another maybe slightly darker side of it was that I certainly anthropomorphized the machine, and I felt a deep connection to it. And when it didn't respond the way I expected it to, I was disappointed. And I think that seems like a small thing, but actually highlights the dangers of the way we're imbuing certain technologies with human characteristics. And again, it's about that mask. If we're masking the ideology behind it, then we don't know who's pulling the strings and the power structures that they support. And we're just reading something as human and friendly, and actually they can really detrimentally be supporting oppressive power systems. So I think it as a piece of technology and as an oral metaphor, I think it's very revealing about power structures, this piece of technology that we've created.
This is a very interesting comment, and it's also like very interesting how both of you had imaginative associations to what this device is. Like Kate referred to it as a creature living on your body, and this kind of almost like symbiotic idea. Also, like you are talking about anthropomorphizing it, and I feel that we used this in the performance also as a springboard in a way for speculation and kind of opening ways to future imaginaries and speculative fictions about not only what this device represents now, but how it can evolve, how it can change society. Like if we have technology built around the body in this way, or like it was a springboard for all kind of like narratives and political discussions.
I think it's an amazing springboard for speculative fiction. I think it ties in very beautifully to the way speculative fiction can be used politically to allow us to imagine better futures and more progressive futures. And I think also we're very used to looking at something through the lens of a speculative fiction because of literary speculative fictions are also on screen. And I don't think we're as used to seeing that on stage. So I think it was quite unusual and original to use this on stage. And I think it's really an excellent tool that's been created for establishing progressive worlds.
Going back to the question of dramaturgy, like our speculative narrative is not fully developed. So that transpired in this kind of showcase of work in progress, like only in some of the poetic phrasing of the chapters, of the titles from the chapters, like those were co-created within the group. Like we wrote those things together based on how we imagined this device to evolve. But I thought dramaturgical wise, from a choreographical and physical composition perspective, like we also like made some very nice, interesting discoveries talking about magic, and also like I remember about this kind of swap of voices. I remember this wonderful moment with Kate when you were like staying late after everyone left, and we were still like enduring and wearing the device like through this kind of very durational training. And suddenly Lou and Johannes swapped the modes and put Kirsty's voice on you, and we all kind of thought, wow, like, we can swap voices, we can put different voices on bodies. That was like felt really interesting to experiment and strange.
Yeah, I think that moment was really, it was really very touching for me, actually. It was kind of it was a bigger moment of surprise than any of the other sounds that had come out of the machine, because suddenly it wasn't a sound, it was, but oh my God, it's Kirsty, to make Kirsty come out. And, she's a close friend of mine. I feel close to her. And it was something very, very, she also has a very beautiful voice that's very human. And I think she's a person who, when she's speaking, when she's singing, she has a lot of, what I would say, a lot of soul and a very human quality. It's not just a beautiful sound, the way that some singers make. And I think it was something about hearing that quality being displaced, or being a little bit pulled, or being a little bit ghost-like in some ways. It was something that worked particularly well with Kirsty's voice. But really there was a jump. There was something very, very like, oh my God, you made Kirsty come out of my body, that that didn't necessarily happen before with the other sounds.
I think that again ties in a little bit with the post-dramatic theatre approach that we took, because it was fragmenting something you're used to seeing as a whole, which I would hope would stimulate the viewer or the spectator to reconsider the identification process and to reconsider their own position when they're sort of to adopt a critical gaze whilst they're watching something. And it's interesting because you had such a visceral response to it, because you know me and we have a close connection. But I think that shows that there's a performative potential there, that you could exploit for a political message.
I think this ties very well in like with Donna Haraway's idea of a cyborg, also like this kind of fragmented swap of identities and forming of assemblages in this kind of poetic ways. We try to use it a bit like in one of the episodes of the performance, like when we have the duo between Dimitri and Angela, and we wanted to make it explicit because like it was we had a male body and a female body, and then we thought that the voices would become probably like more distinguishable, swapped. But I have to say that also like being a work in progress also on the technological side, maybe this needs to be more maybe also because we are not in the same physical space with the audience. I feel this is not so noticeable, like just watching it from the screen.
I also think one of the things I learned through this process is that there's such a reality to this sound once it's in the space that the way it all, like you can try, you have an idea, okay, we have a concept, we're going to do this, and the reality of the sound that's produced is such that another concept is emerging, and you have to follow that, or nothing's alive, nothing's existing actually. So that like the idea of a voice swap is very beautiful in itself, but the reality emerges at very unexpected, like near uncontrollable moments, I think.
I agree that this has again emphasized the need for live performance, because I think the film was captured very beautifully, and I think it's a really nice glimpse of what was happening in the rehearsal space. But we're almost versed in CGI and film and television distorting reality, whereas to see that in person, to hear another voice coming out of a living, breathing body in a space, has a much more impactful effect on us, I think. So I agree with you that actually to see the machines in person was it was quite sort of shocking, and I do think it can challenge the usual framing of a story. I think it is a really interesting new narrative device.
Thank you so much, Christian. Kate, I agree with you on this line. I think we should definitely present this performance also like in an actual real space. I hope that we are going to have this opportunity in the future. And I hope that everyone who joined us now could ideally be able to join us in real life. I would like now to move to the last round. I think we are a bit over time. Thank you so much, everyone, for the patience and staying with us. I would suggest to move to the last round of the Q&A. We are actually like welcoming questions from the audience, but also like in the final round of gathering together with everyone, and maybe sharing moments of magic and takeaways from this process and experiences with each other or with the audience.
So maybe I would just ask a question. Can you hear me? I'm not sure right now.
Yeah, we are hearing you well.
Diana, you were asking a lot all the other people, but I think it would be also interesting for the public to know what you were expecting of this piece at this at this stage, actually, because we know it's a work in progress. And what were the biggest surprises for you when you reached this state?
Thank you so much for the question. It's a very good one. So as I said, I was theater and dance. They have many tools to pick from, and every practitioner comes with their own toolbox. I was drawing, and I'm drawing from different sources. But I think for this project, I was mainly inspired by this methodology coming from the Grotowski Institute, and maybe I'm talking about also some post-Grotowski methodologies. I had the wonderful opportunity also to work with wonderful practitioners and artists such as Dita Berkeley, who is working with the embodied voice in ways I've never seen anyone working with before, in ways that are kind of very wild and raw, just pulling this voice out of the body. And talking about embodied knowledge and about how this knowledge is kind of expressed through the voice of the body. And so I was very fascinated by those methodologies of looking into the embodied voice, and also in traditional singing, this idea that the songs are encoding information of this original singer who sang the song, that songs are not produced in a vacuum, but of course in a culture. And the first singer has a certain type of body, has to express this song, to carry it through a different landscape, to a very specific landscape. So there is all this information almost encoded into the voice and expressed through the body. I was really fascinated by that, and I wanted to experiment with this idea of the embodied voice and movement, to put them together in the room and see how this works together with this new layer of awareness coming from this artificial voice, how the performer manages to juggle with all these layers, with the movement, with the artificial voice, and then to bring up the natural voice and improvise together with all these elements. Then I was interested also in some dramaturgical structures, also inspired from Grotowski, for example, this idea of physical action, of devising choreography based on personal history and imagination, expressing it through the body, and then performing it in the proximity of another person over and over again, until almost this kind of action loses its meaning, but also in a way that it creates, because you have those different bodies in space performing over and over again, simultaneously sharing the same space, sharing the same subliminal information, how they are altering each other, how they are influencing each other, how they are maybe not even aware of this, there is kind of a transition of movement, or those synchronicities are starting to occur and new meaning is created in the eye of the audience. So I was interested in working with those elements. These are some of the thoughts that went, each episode actually, it's investigating a different problem, or are looking at different ways of making composition. Some of them are not finished yet, are very abstract, were for me a way of experimenting with things. And sometimes it was joyful and was thinking, okay, this looks well, this feels good. Sometimes things didn't go as expected, but still the hunt for the miracles, it's super interesting. And also seeing how this non-human element, this algorithm being present in the space, how it affects reality. Like it's amazing, like to see how it alters reality. I think dance probably doesn't need AI, but it's such a magical kind of element to have in the room and play with. I think it's really beautiful. Yeah, so that's me sharing some thoughts. Maybe
Diana actually opened my eyes to the idea that technology is beyond just computers. That was, in my mind, it was technology is a very recent invention, but that actually there are ancient technologies. And I think if we can think of it as related to a form of magic and something that can unveil truths about our society, I think it's quite easy to justify its inclusion in the arts.
Can I add that in relation to what you just said, Kirsty, like that's kind of what I was thinking when I said about overcoming technology. Is like not I guess I'm not thinking about removing technology, but what's interesting is when we're working together in the room, there was a sort of I suppose we went in without knowing each other very well, without having worked together, and also with a sort of technology in between us, which was actually at first acting as a sort of a disconnection. And as we kind of got closer to having something which was functional and which became interesting, then we sort of developed a working connection through that. So in a way, it's as if as we went along, the technology in the room became less and less like present or less dominant, and suddenly we had these direct connections. And the best case scenarios that we had were when we were kind of sitting around together, and often with just one performer. Like we did this a lot with Kate, where we'd be together and we'd try certain sounds, and then suddenly these sort of characters emerge, narratives emerge, new meanings emerge, which are kind of let's say they when those emerge, they kind of place the technology in the background, because suddenly the focus shifts from the technology to those new fictional entities in a way. I'm thinking of, for example, when we introduced water, or when we introduced someone else's voice on another person's body, all these sort of all these actions sort of brought these new kind of like characters and meanings into the interaction that we had with the performers, and suddenly we're dealing with fiction rather than with technology. That was a really interesting kind of progression, I thought.
Yeah, maybe I want to add something there. I totally agree to these magic moments, which I always hope for, especially in this time when we dealt with technology, but also this other part where we actually dealt with technology a lot, and were super interesting for me, because it wasn't just like, patching cables or something. It was this thing that you had dancers who were like cyborgs, really. At one point, I really had this, you were human, right? But you had like this whole technology on your body, which actually partly were controlled by Mika. So basically they would make a noise, and you couldn't do anything about it, and ask the operator for help. And then Mika just was, okay, Katie, I updated you right now. Now it should be okay. And these were these weird moments, which actually Diana took then partly into the piece, or will maybe take into the piece, because it was such a, let's say, a sober, tedious reality of science fiction. Suddenly I found myself in a science fiction movie, which was just sitting there with a laptop, having cables, people working together and so forth. But as we all know, it's not like Star Trek. It's more like it's gonna be just people sweating around, working on stuff. So for me, that was super futurious, and also a bit, how to say, there were really awkward moments regarding the cyborg reality, I have to say.
Thank you so much, everybody. As I look a little bit on the time and I have the impression that we could just continue like that. And there are so many questions still open. You showed a lot of different sides of this whole piece, but I think we must end. I think the future will tell what all this will be, if we will become cyborgs or if we just, I don't know, use the technique to do beautiful things and beautiful new works. I'm more on the second part, but thank you all so much for your participation in this evening, for your projects. Thank you, Diana, for being there and for doing and enabling all this. And yes, I would just like to thank you also so much for being with us. And maybe you want to add something to it, Diana?
I just want to add to the thanks. I think, it's amazing to be able to work with such talented people. And I think it's really a privilege. Like, this doesn't happen often. And I think it's a pity. I think opportunities like this should happen probably more often. I was really lucky. I think more people probably should be lucky and should be experimenting like this. So it was a wonderful process. It's a pity that we were stopped in our tracks exactly when we kind of found some synergies and like when the technology started to work a little bit. So I hope we are gonna have the chance to actually continue making things simpler and focus more on the beauty than on the problems. So I hope the privilege will come back upon us at some point in the future. Thank you so much for being there.
So thank you, everybody, and enjoy the evening. Thanks also for looking on this whole stream and being with us. Thank you, public, and see you soon for the next and hopefully live performance. Thank you. Bye-bye.